Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of GodSaw's Turnbuckle, the wrestling video podcast here on YouTube right now. And again, I am saying it, and I'm currently working on it, though. There's a lot of different things I'm currently working on. We are working on making a audio variation, maybe through SoundCloud or something like that, and I'm trying to figure out when I want to get it started, everything in that sense, and if I want to subscribe or anything to go along with it. So bear with me on that side, and we're gonna work on that. Also, if this video seems a little bit soft in the terms of the audio or the voice, I am currently working under a different microphone at the moment and kind of trying to figure out a few things at this time, and we will be back to the normal setup as soon as I possibly can. I am having I'm not having issues. Someone's kind of borrowing my mixer at the moment, so I'm working off of a different USB microphone at this point in time. So with that being said, this GodSaw's Turnbuckle is going to focus around Impact Wrestling on June 29th, 2017. This is the final episode of Impact Wrestling from India, and also the final episode going into the Slammiversary pay-per-view, or Slammiversary 15, I believe is what they are now calling it. They started off the show with they just show highlights, and I like this aspect. They did contract signings for the four major matches that they are going with on the show. The unification matches for the women's title and the knockouts title and the two world titles. Also, and then they also did it for EC3 and James Storm and the Full Metal Mayhem match. They just showed quick highlights, promos, and everything in that sense, which also set up an 8-man tag later in the night. As things were beginning to break down, Bruce Pritchard set up an 8-man tag with Alberto El Patron, Eddie Edwards, James Storm, and Muhammad Ali Shira getting placed in there. And was going to be Lashley, Davey Richards, EC3, and Congo Kong. Kind of meshing all of these storylines all together, and with the three pay-per-view matches, and then the storyline that's been going on with Muhammad Ali Shira and Congo Kong. So that was going to be a little bit later on in the night. After this, before they go into a commercial break, they show a quick setup of both Rockstar, Spud, and Swoggle basically getting ready for their street fight that was going to be later in the evening, which I'll talk about that one a little bit later. But before we get into the matches and everything in that sense, there was some news. I'm filming this on a Friday right now. There was some news that came out a little bit earlier today, and this is basically signifying why they have been using the Global Force Wrestling titles. As I have always been saying, it's kind of been at this point in time, leading up to everything, those titles just seemed pointless because GFW apparently wasn't going to be a thing anymore, and that they were going with Impact Wrestling. But apparently, Anthem has decided that yes, the Impact Wrestling name will still be there in the terms of the name of the TV show, but it's now going to be under the Global Force Wrestling name itself, which basically is saying that after Sunday, the Global Force Wrestling titles are going to be the main titles. The old Impact titles are probably going to be no more, and that was that's probably going to be under one aspect that they probably decided that it was a good idea to kind of go with that, because those belts are already made and they don't need to do anything extra for them in that sense of it. They're already made, they're already there, and you can go with them. I don't know what that means for the X Division title. Maybe that was the reason why they changed it to green so long ago. Not really. That was longer before this whole thing with GFW starting up. So now, and probably starting Sunday, that Impact Wrestling is going to be going under the Global Force Wrestling name itself. So instead of, when they acquired everything, instead of just getting rid of the GFW name, they are going to incorporate it and rebrand Impact Wrestling under Global Force Wrestling at this point in time. Which, in one sense of it, it's not a bad move by Anthem to go ahead and do that. just off of the aspect of the stigma that had been around the TNA and the Impact Wrestling name. Now they can have a rebranded, brand new name to go along with it, and we'll see if that incorporates anything, or if that is anything that leads to something good for Impact Wrestling going forward. So now with that one on the side and everything, we are going to go into the first matches of the night. The first match of the night, which was Trevor Lee and Loki going up against Matt Sidell and Sanjay Dutt. This match was given a good chunk of time, and I thought it was a rather good match. Again, a lot of these matches tonight were pretty much just... a lot of this show just felt like filler in every way. In the terms of the matches, the match quality throughout the night was fine for the most part, but you were basically getting mixtures of tag matches. You didn't have much. You only had really one one-on-one match throughout the entire night. That was Swoggle and Rockstar Spud. So it was kind of a mixture of tag matches, getting everybody kind of put together with their feuds and going into the show. I wouldn't say anything really memorable about this match. Matt Sidell and Sanjay Dutt win, with Matt Sidell going over with the Shooting Star Press. Like I said, it was good. It was an X Division style match. I thought it was a good match. It was rather enjoyable to watch, but nothing much to it. Nothing really adding to story going into everything. Up next, they showed off another video package of D'Angelo Williams, basically talking about himself and what he wanted and how he felt about wrestling and everything in that sense. Even though he had been a football player, he's now getting into wrestling on that side of it. And they showed some training video for him getting ready for his match with Moose against Chris Adonis and Eli Drake, which actually leads to them next. It was Eli Drake and Chris Adonis going against the Mumbai Cats. This was basically a squash match. Nothing much to it in any sense of the word on that side of it. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to see what D'Angelo Williams can do on Sunday. I do plan on trying to watch the show and get a review. It's all going to be based on my work schedule at that point in time. We'll see how everything goes. We got a busy week ahead, and there's a lot of things to really try to get done, and a lot of things are going up on my plate. So I'm going to try to watch Slammiversary live when it happens, in that sense, to go along with. But yeah, nothing much to that match. You didn't even get an interaction with Moose or anything to go along with it. It was just building momentum for Chris Adonis and Eli Drake. Up next is what they ended up calling the Mumbai Street Fight with Swoggle and Rockstar Spud. This was more of a comedy match, and you kind of expected that. With Rockstar Spud and Swoggle, you kind of have to expect a less serious match in that sense with both of these guys. They had different weapons in there. You had Rockstar Spud trying to play serious in certain aspects, like where Swoggle was throwing walnuts or something at him, and had powder that he was throwing into his face and everything in that sense. Rockstar Spud finds a trash can and just chugs it at Swoggle. He was trying to play serious until he grabs the microphone and starts going off on Swoggle, and then eventually, and because this was all based around Swoggle getting his pants pulled down, Rockstar Spud admits to it that he meant to pull his pants down, and then also the ending of the match basically redid that spot with the referee, who was a person from I forget the name off the top of my head, but he was there being the referee towards the match. He ends out pulling down Spud ends out pulling down his pants, and they just kind of look at each other, and they both beat up Spud, and then Spud ends out getting defeated by Swoggle after, I believe, I forget exactly what it was. Was it Swoggle diving onto Spud through like a table or something in that sense? I believe that's how it ended up going. But decent comedy match, but nothing really much to go about it. It depends on how you feel about comedy matches in that sense of everything. Up next to talk about, actually, you get two different videos here. with JB and Joseph Park. So basically them showing off their final training. This was a final pep talk from JB going into the pay-per-view match with Josh and Scott Steiner, which, don't get me wrong, I don't really care much about the storyline, but you're getting some decent stuff in the terms of these training videos and everything in that sense. In the terms of their comedy and everything that go along with it, this one played off a little bit more serious, where you had JB talking to Joseph Park, and he said to find his inner monster. And he gives him an Abyss action figure as Joseph Park is looking at it and kind of goes away. They go back to it later, and it's basically Joseph Park finding his inner Abyss, or refinding Abyss. So we're going to possibly see Abyss coming into the Slammiversary pay-per-view. He pulls out Janice and everything in that sense. He makes a speech that's like, you got to rely on old friends, and pulls out Janice. And apparently this is going to be a no DQ match, because they make mention, it's like Josh Matthews is like, yeah, if you bring Janice, you're going to get DQ'd. I guess you didn't, and I think JB says, it's like, I guess you didn't read the contract then. So I guess it's going to be a no DQ match or something in that sense. I don't absolutely know on it. It will be, it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. If he comes out as Joseph Park and then changes into Abyss later, or if they just have him going out as Abyss in the show itself. Up next to talk about, they had a couple video packages. Actually, they had a good chunk of video packages throughout the night setting up matches, but the one that kind of resonated with everything, they were basically 2 video packages from both Lashley and Alberto El Patron, basically talking about their meaning of the world title, everything in that sense. But they were also announcing that they were going to have corner people for the match itself. Earlier in the evening, it was announced that Alberto El Patron was going to have his father in his corner at the actual pay-per-view itself, and it was so that aired a little bit later in the evening. But during the Bobby Lashley one, they actually said that it was going to be King Mo, the MMA fighter King Mo, was going to be in his corner to go along with it. And they also cut both really good promos, everything in that sense. The work of Lashley's promos in his Impact Wrestling days have been really well done. You grasp what he's supposed to be, everything in that sense. It's a far cry from where he was many years ago during the WWE times and everything in that sense, and his early Impact times as well. And Alberto El Patron's always been a relatively good promo to go along with it. Both of these guys delivered excellent promos and a good video package setting up for their match at the pay-per-view itself. So this leads into the final 2 matches of the night. It was this one was a 6-person tag. This first one was a 6-person tag. It was KM, Sienna, and Laurel Van Ness going up against Braxton Sutter, Allie, and Rosemary. This wasn't much of a match. It was actually a rather short match, with Rosemary picking up the win over Laurel Van Ness with her I believe she calls it the Red Wedding, but it's pretty much the F5. So Braxton Sutter, Allie, and Rosemary go over in this match. Like I said, not much to it. Just again, more matches, getting the people with the feuds going throughout the entire show, which leads us to the main event of the night, which was Alberto El Patron, Eddie Edwards, James Storm, Muhammad Shira going up against Lashley, Davey Richards, EC3, and Congo Kong. Now, before the match even starts, it goes to a 4-on-3. Muhammad Shira gets attacked as he was the first one going out there. He gets in the ring, and all 4 of them just attack him. And you even had them make, like, the commentators even make mention, it's like, he should have just waited outside the ring for his partners to come out, because it took a good chunk of time for the rest of the partners to come out. Then going through the match, again, nothing really memorable. Kind of your standard fare 8-man tag main event. Decent match. It was a rather good match in the end. Muhammad Shira does make a reappearance in this one to kind of make the save when the face team was going down, and that was kind of like the hot tag for everything, that when Muhammad Shira comes back out, and eventually the face team does pick up the victory, with Alberto El Patron picking up the final pinfall in that sense of it. Now, overall, the show, I thought it was a rather decent show in the sense of what it was. They had already built their stories, and they were just finally reaffirming everything going into the pay-per-view. I mean, all you ended up getting in the end was a good chunk of tag matches and everything in that sense, setting up, doing the final setups. And you got a lot of video package as well, doing the final setups, going into the Slammiversary pay-per-view. It did what it needed to do. The matches themselves were fine. Good in some cases, just fine in others, in that sense. It did what it needed to do going into Slammiversary, and that's all you could really ask out of shows. Like, okay, you basically solidified all your stories. What do we do for the final week? Well, we gotta do something. We'll keep everybody together, but we're gonna get these video packages, get them well done, everything in that sense, and we'll have a bunch of tag matches to go along with it. Not a bad way of going. It's an alright way of going into it. You didn't really get anything solidifying going into the pay-per-view itself that adds to it or anything to go along with it, outside of this aspect that now you have King Mo and Alberto El Patron's father, who are going to be in the corners for Lashley and Alberto El Patron to go along with it. So that was kind of just announced this time around. That doesn't really add too much to the match. They had, like I said, they had already solidified the story, so they didn't really want to try to ruin anything by adding anything extra to go along with it. So with that being said, that's basically everything for Impact Wrestling in this episode of GodSaw's Turnbuckle. I hope you guys enjoyed everything. Slammiversary is Sunday. I'm going to try to be watching it myself on that day, and then, of course, get a review up for it. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.